March 17th, 1945. A cold, mist-laden night settled over the shattered village of Saint-Hilaire, France. The cobblestones were slick with rain, reflecting the flickering flames from half-destroyed houses. Somewhere down the narrow lane, German sentries shifted uneasily, muffled curses slipping past their lips as shadows stretched like ghosts across the walls. The sudden rat-tat-tat of a small, crude weapon cut through the tension, a staccato rhythm that seemed almost out of place in the stillness of the night. Lieutenant Ernst Bauer, crouched behind the rubble of a collapsed bakery, froze. His instincts screamed danger, but the source confounded him. The weapon was short, almost comically stocky, with a stamped steel frame that betrayed its low-cost origins. Yet in the dark, that so-called ugly M3 grease gun belched bursts of fire with deadly precision. Bauer's men scrambled, returning hesitant fire, but the attackers were gone as quickly as they had appeared, leaving only echoing tracer trails and the acrid scent of gunpowder. From the American side, Sergeant John Mac McNally peered around the corner of a crumbling wall, his gloved fingers tightening around the M3. Training drills, ordnance briefings, and countless factory hours had prepared him for this moment. The little submachine gun, cheap and mocked in the depot for its crude appearance, now sang a different story. One of speed, surprise, and lethal efficiency. Each burst tore through the darkness, clearing rooms, hallways, and alleys in a way that even the proudest Thompson could envy. Bauer's unit retreated, disoriented by the sudden ferocity and precision of the assault. Reports later captured the shock in his voice. It was small, ugly, yet it fired like a machine of vengeance. Soldiers whispered its name in half fear, half wonder. The grease gun had earned a reputation overnight. The simplicity of its design belied its psychological impact. Cheap, rugged, and reliable under conditions that would jam or overheat more sophisticated weapons. Inside the abandoned house, McNally's squad cleared the last room. A young private inspected the gun, wiping a smear of grease from the magazine and joking, "For $30, this little beauty just bought us the street." The irony was unmistakable. A weapon produced for pennies in a U.S. factory had become a nightmare for German infantry, its reputation spreading faster than its rounds could fly. The night's action was only a glimpse of the grease gun's broader effect. Across France and into the heart of Germany, its crude silhouette, staccato bursts, and uncanny reliability began reshaping tactical assumptions. For soldiers like Bauer, the simple object that once seemed laughable now defined danger. For McNally and his comrades, it was a tool that fused ingenuity with industrial might. The origins, production, and strategic intent behind this unassuming submachine gun would soon be revealed, showing how a $30 weapon could alter perceptions and reshape the battlefield. Late 1942, a sprawling factory in Hartford, Connecticut, hummed with the relentless rhythm of wartime production. Stamped steel sheets glinted under fluorescent lights, and conveyor belts carried partially assembled firearms past rows of riveters, welders, and machinists. The air smelled of oil, metal, and the faint tang of sweat as workers, men and women, rushed to meet quotas demanded by a nation at war. Among the arsenal of weapons designed to outfit the U.S. Army, one stood out not for elegance, but for practicality: the M3 submachine gun, quickly earning its nickname, the grease gun, for its utilitarian design and resemblance to a mechanic's tool. The Army Ordnance Department had envisioned a weapon that could be produced rapidly, cheaply, and in large quantities without sacrificing reliability. Memoir and declassified production reports emphasize the ingenuity behind the design. Stamped metal components, reduced machining time, a simple bolt system allowed easy cleaning, and the compact frame fit neatly into airborne, armored, and infantry operations. Each gun could be manufactured for roughly $30, astonishingly low compared to the Thompson, which demanded intricate machining and cost several times more. Cost efficiency was paramount. American planners understood that equipping millions of soldiers required not only industrial might, but clever engineering. Training depots across the United States echoed with the metallic rattle of M3s during live fire drills. Soldiers were taught to strip, clean, and operate the weapon with meticulous attention. Letters home from recruits describe both amusement and admiration. The gun looked crude, almost comically ugly, yet it fired steadily and could withstand mud, grime, and neglect that would have disabled other weapons. Ordnance manuals, often tucked into kits or strapped to belts, emphasized simplicity and maintenance, underscoring that reliability, especially in the mud and rubble of European campaigns, was more valuable than appearance. Early feedback from frontline testing reinforced these priorities. Infantry reports, later archived at the National WWII Museum, described the first shipments to Europe and North Africa. Soldiers marveled at the gun's ability to fire rapidly in close quarters, yet initial impressions were mixed. The ugly little thing lacked the heft and aesthetic appeal of the Thompson, its appearance prompting mild ridicule in barracks. Yet within days, the practical advantages became evident. Compact size, controllable recoil, and ease of concealment made it perfect for house-to-house combat, trench raids, and urban ambushes. Meanwhile, German intelligence began to take note. Interrogation reports from captured soldiers and battlefield diaries indicate that early encounters with the M3 often surprised German units. Its small size and rapid-fire capability were underestimated, leading to confusion and tactical errors during raids. One Wehrmacht diary entry from a lieutenant stationed in Normandy remarked, "A new American weapon appeared in the village. It was small, almost comical, but it fired like a wolf. Our men hesitated, and the street was lost before we could react." These reports, preserved in captured documents, highlight how the M3's efficiency undermined German expectations, turning a cheap, ugly firearm into a psychological instrument. The strategic philosophy behind the M3 was simple yet revolutionary. Mass production, ease of use, and battlefield effectiveness could outweigh complexity, prestige, or even power in a conventional sense. Ordnance memos detail planning sessions where engineers debated whether aesthetics mattered at all, ultimately concluding that rapid deployment and reliability were the metrics that would win battles. Factory supervisors implemented production lines that echoed assembly line precision, sometimes producing hundreds of units per day, while training instructors emphasized speed, familiarity, and adaptability over ceremony or ceremony's comfort. The context of the European theater amplified the weapon's effectiveness. Narrow streets, shattered buildings, hedgerows, and urban rubble created environments where mobility, concealment, and rapid-fire capability were decisive. Letters from American infantrymen emphasized surprise encounters. The M3 could be fired around corners, from windows, or while sprinting through broken streets, delivering bursts that stunned even veteran German soldiers. What initially appeared ugly or lowly in design revealed itself as a masterstroke of practical engineering when filtered through the chaos of real combat. By early 1944, the M3 had become a staple in American infantry kits, its reputation spreading quietly through the ranks. Soldiers learned to appreciate its simplicity. A single magazine could deliver controlled bursts at close range. The weapon's light weight allowed rapid movement through rubble-strewn streets, and its stamped construction could endure mud, rain, and the careless handling that would disable more delicate firearms. Letters home from privates stationed in Normandy and later in Belgium reflect a mixture of humor and admiration. One young soldier wrote, "She looks ugly as sin, but she clears a room faster than anything else in my pack." The phrase "ugly efficiency" began circulating, capturing the duality of disdain and respect for a weapon that refused to fail in its primary purpose. German soldiers, meanwhile, were beginning to notice the psychological effect of these compact submachine guns. Interrogation notes from captured infantry reveal recurring phrases: fast, sudden, impossible to predict, and occasionally, the little steel devil. Battalion reports describe confusion during ambushes and night raids, where German troops, expecting traditional Thompson or M1 carbine firepower, were confronted by bursts from these inconspicuous guns. Even experienced officers found themselves pausing mid-counterattack, unnerved by the speed and reliability of the M3, which seemed to appear from nowhere and vanish just as quickly. Propaganda and training films in American units began to highlight the M3's practicality, emphasizing its use in house-to-house clearing, trench raids, and urban patrols. Ordnance memoranda instructed commanders to distribute the guns widely, ensuring that every squad had at least one M3 for close-quarters action. German accounts, conversely, note that the sudden appearance of these ugly firearms contributed to hesitancy and disrupted formations during street-to-street fighting. One captured after-action report recounts a unit forced to retreat after encountering a small squad armed entirely with M3s. They fired around corners with uncanny speed. Our men could not respond in time. Entire streets were lost without direct engagement. Field correspondence between American supply depots and frontline units underscores the industrial scale behind this tactical edge. Thousands of M3s rolled off assembly lines weekly, shipped to England, then onto the beaches of Normandy, each costing a fraction of what a Thompson required. The ordnance logs reveal an astonishing efficiency. In a single month, over 10,000 units could be deployed at a cost comparable to fewer than 1,000 traditional submachine guns. The sheer volume of distribution meant that German infantry frequently faced the weapon without warning, enhancing the perception of ubiquity and inevitability. Soldier diaries from late 1944 confirm that the grease gun's impact extended beyond tactical success. The psychological weight was significant. Its compact form, rapid-fire capability, and sudden appearance sowed doubt and fear in German ranks. Officers reported that the weapon's reputation alone, often exaggerated through rumor and shared anecdotes, could disrupt defensive operations even before engagement. The motif of ugly efficiency crystallized. The unassuming, low-cost firearm embodied an asymmetric advantage, transforming industrial mass production into a tool of psychological as well as physical warfare. By the time American forces pushed into the German heartland, the M3 had proven itself repeatedly in both urban and hedgerow fighting. Its presence altered the nature of close-quarters combat. German soldiers became cautious, defensive, and at times hesitant to advance, knowing that the next burst of staccato fire could emerge from any doorway, alley, or collapsed structure. Letters captured from prisoners and memoirs of frontline veterans attest that the psychological effect often exceeded the tactical damage, a testament to the weapon's unique design philosophy and battlefield role. These accounts set the stage for the descent into full combat encounters, where the grease gun would transition from a surprising tool to a consistent nightmare for German infantry. The motif of ugly efficiency would deepen as soldiers faced its speed, reliability, and unpredictability in situations that tested nerves, reflexes, and tactical improvisation under fire. November 2nd, 1944. The village of Hürtgen, Germany, lay beneath a pall of fog and smoke, its streets shattered by shellfire and abandoned vehicles. American squads moved cautiously, boots crunching over broken bricks and splintered wood. Sergeant John McNally adjusted his grip on the M3 grease gun, feeling the familiar cold steel against his palm. The magazine heavy yet balanced, the weapon's simple sights ready for the chaos ahead. The little gun, derided as crude and ugly in American depots, now carried the weight of countless previous encounters, each burst of fire a rehearsed, lethal punctuation mark. The first German patrol appeared at the end of a narrow alley, rifles raised and eyes scanning. McNally's heart thudded. A combination of training, anticipation, and raw fear. With a quick adjustment, he fired a controlled burst. The rat-tat-tat of the M3 echoed against ruined walls. The Germans dove for cover, disoriented by the sudden, precise bursts from a weapon they had underestimated. The air smelled of cordite, wet wood, and fear. McNally moved forward, clearing a partially collapsed building. The grease gun, barking continuously, its design allowing rapid movement without the cumbersome weight of earlier submachine guns. Inside the building, the German defenders regrouped, confusion etched across their faces. Lieutenant Ernst Bauer, his voice strained, shouted orders as his men ducked under bursts that seemed to come from every angle. Diaries recovered post-war described the surreal terror of the M3's presence. It was small, it looked almost laughable, yet it dominated the room. Every room cleared by McNally's squad reinforced the reputation of this ugly instrument, its compact form becoming a nightmare that German infantry whispered about in tense hours of regrouping. The motif of ugly efficiency became immediately tangible in combat. The M3's simplicity allowed for minimal recoil, rapid successive shots, and fluid movement around corners, furniture, and rubble. Soldiers noted that even inexperienced gunmen could wield it with devastating effect, a fact that heightened the sense of unpredictability. Bauer's reports later admitted that the weapon's design turned familiar defensive strategies upside down. Hallways, staircases, and narrow rooms, once offering cover, now became death traps when confronted with bursts of the grease-smeared little gun. Outside, McNally's squad pressed forward through the streets, engaging in a rhythm of brief pauses and sudden ambushes. Tracers laced the fog, bullets ricocheted off shattered stone, and smoke curled in twisting plumes. For the German infantry, each encounter reinforced an unsettling pattern. The M3 could emerge from anywhere, fire accurately, and retreat or reposition almost instantly. Letters from Bauer's soldiers detail a growing psychological burden. The gun appears like a shadow, fires like a storm, and disappears before we can breathe. The descent into full-scale combat also revealed the strategic advantages of widespread M3 deployment. Units armed with M3s could execute rapid room-to-room sweeps, flank enemy positions, and maintain mobility without sacrificing firepower. Training drills in American camps emphasized this flexibility, and in real combat, it became evident that the gun's utility extended beyond raw lethality. It shaped engagements, dictated movement, and created openings where larger, heavier weapons could not. Even minor encounters escalated quickly into chaos. McNally recalled firing from behind overturned tables, sliding past rubble, and clearing hallways while coordinating with his squad. The M3's weight and design allowed him to transition smoothly from cover to exposure, delivering bursts with consistent accuracy. German soldiers, faced with this relentless efficiency, began to overreact, retreating prematurely, misjudging lines of fire, or hesitating at thresholds. These small but cumulative failures amplified the weapon's psychological impact, transforming it from a mere firearm into a tactical disruptor. The motif threaded through every action. What appeared ugly, weak, or insignificant on inspection became a force multiplier in practice. The descent continued as more villages, hedgerows, and urban rubble saw the arrival of the M3. Bauer's unit, once confident in conventional defensive tactics, struggled to adapt. Rumors and fear of the little gun spread faster than physical encounters could account for. Soldiers spoke of its unpredictability in hushed tones, giving it a mythic quality that amplified its effectiveness beyond the mechanics of steel and fire. As November bled into December 1944, the M3 grease gun's presence became a constant shadow over German positions. Bauer's platoon, once methodical and confident, now approached every street, building, and cellar with heightened caution. Ambushes that would have been routine were now tinged with anxiety. Every corner could conceal the compact weapon. Every window could erupt with the staccato burst that had become their worst nightmare. Letters captured post-war describe a creeping tension, the way fear spread not through overwhelming firepower alone, but through anticipation of the M3's sudden appearance. In one notable encounter, Bauer's unit attempted to retake a partially occupied farmhouse. As his men advanced through the rain-slicked courtyard, the first bursts rang out, rat-tat-tat. From a darkened doorway, soldiers dove instinctively, bullets chipping wood and splintering stone. The small, cheap-looking gun tore through cover with surprising consistency. McNally's squad advanced room by room, each maneuver executed with precision, exploiting the weapon's lightweight and controllable recoil. By the time Bauer realized the full scope of the ambush, several of his men were pinned or retreating. Diaries recount Bauer's growing frustration. The gun is laughable, yet unstoppable. We hesitate, we falter, and it seizes every advantage. Rumors of the M3's magic spread through German lines. Soldiers described the weapon as appearing from nowhere, striking rapidly and vanishing before they could organize counterfire. While tactical manuals attempted to rationalize these engagements, the weapon's psychological effect was undeniable. Hesitation, second-guessing, and fear became as lethal as bullets. Even seasoned NCOs admitted in letters that their troops were unnerved by the speed and unpredictability of the small gun, and that its reputation often preceded its arrival on the battlefield. Meanwhile, McNally and other American squads developed informal tactics that leveraged the M3's strengths. Bursts were timed, squads moved in fluid formations, and the compact design allowed firing from unconventional positions, under tables, through doorways, or around corners without slowing momentum. Training had emphasized improvisation, and the grease gun's simplicity amplified human ingenuity. Its low cost, ease of maintenance, and ability to survive mud, rain, and neglect meant that it was never a limiting factor. Soldiers could focus on maneuver, coordination, and exploiting terrain without worrying about mechanical failure. The cumulative effect on German forces was profound. Reports indicate that hesitation became ingrained. Patrols slowed, reconnaissance became overcautious, and even aggressive officers like Bauer began to order more defensive postures. The motif of ugly efficiency had matured. The weapon's crude exterior belied a devastating psychological impact. Every encounter reinforced the lesson that appearances could deceive, and that simple, reliable tools could outperform expectations in the hands of disciplined, adaptive users. The descent culminated in urban engagements, where small squads armed with M3s could dominate entire streets or buildings. The combination of speed, concealment, and psychological impact created asymmetric advantages. Even when outnumbered, McNally's teams exploited surprise, structure, and the reputation of their weapon to achieve tactical outcomes far beyond what numbers alone would predict. Bauer's unit, forced to retreat repeatedly, began to understand the strange paradox. The uglier and cheaper the gun, the deadlier its effect when wielded intelligently. This phase of relentless, close-quarters combat prepared both sides for a new rhythm of daily operations. American squads had proven the M3's effectiveness under fire. German units had internalized fear and respect. The story of the ugly $30 gun had moved beyond isolated skirmishes. It had become a defining factor in tactical planning, psychological operations, and urban warfare. The next stage, the routine of life with the grease gun, would explore how soldiers incorporated this weapon into daily operations, maintenance, and camaraderie, while German forces developed countermeasures to survive its omnipresence. December 10, 1944. A frozen dawn in a Belgian village. Remnants of smoke and frost curling from chimneys. Sergeant John Mac McNally crouched by the perimeter, adjusting the small M3 grease gun slung across his chest. The streets were quiet, broken only by the occasional shuffle of boots or the distant rattle of a supply convoy. In these moments between engagements, the true rhythm of life with the weapon revealed itself. Maintenance, familiarity, and the subtle rituals that transformed a crude firearm into a trusted companion. Inside the squad's temporary billet, soldiers gathered around tables littered with magazines, brushes, and oil cans. Each M3 was stripped with practiced hands, the bolt carefully inspected, the stamped metal wiped clean of mud and grease. Private letters described the ritual in almost reverent terms. Ugly as she is, she's mine. A quick cleaning, a pat, and she's ready again. She never fails. Humor interlaced with duty. One soldier joked that the gun was the only piece of equipment he could trust, more than the barracks' rickety wood stove. Training continued even in downtime. New recruits were taught how to fire from the hip, transition around corners, and operate in close quarters, with the M3's lightweight and compact size making drills faster and safer than with heavier submachine guns. Commanders encouraged improvisation, firing while sliding, using rubble as cover, or even concealing the weapon in ways that would surprise enemy soldiers during night raids. The grease gun's design made these tactics feasible, and in the process, soldiers developed a sense of intimacy with their weapon, understanding not only how it fired, but how it shaped their movement, timing, and decision-making. Meanwhile, McNally's squad used humor to ease tension. They had nicknamed the M3 the Ugly Duckling, and sometimes recited mock testimonials, exaggerating its prowess or recounting improbable feats. These moments reinforced camaraderie and, in subtle ways, strengthened morale. Diaries preserved after the war describe soldiers laughing over breakfast, swapping stories of how their ugly little friend had cleared houses faster than anyone expected, and joking about the fear it instilled in German infantry. Even in the monotony of camp life, the weapon's presence created a rhythm. Cleaning, joking, training, and preparing, each cycle reinforcing confidence and readiness. On the German side, the routine took a different form. Lieutenant Ernst Bauer's men adapted their patrols, adjusted defensive postures, and modified tactics to minimize exposure to sudden M3 bursts. Night watches were lengthened, reconnaissance became more cautious, and soldiers learned to anticipate ambushes in ways they had never done before the ugly gun entered their lives. Memoirs later recount the mental strain. Every door, corner, and shadow held the potential for lethal surprise. The grease gun's ubiquity forced a continuous recalibration of German expectations, instilling caution even in well-trained veterans. Supplies and logistics intertwined with these routines. The U.S. Army ensured that magazines, spare parts, and cleaning kits were available, often using makeshift solutions when standard equipment lagged behind the front lines. Soldiers became inventive. Strips of cloth replaced wipers, oil from mess kits sufficed for lubrication, and training in the field emphasized adaptability. These practices reinforced the motif of ugly efficiency. The weapon, simple and cheap, demanded nothing more than ingenuity and discipline to maintain its battlefield edge. Beyond maintenance, the M3 shaped tactical habits. Small teams rehearsed silent movement, room-clearing drills, and coordinated bursts, integrating the gun's strengths into everyday planning. Letters from McNally describe how even mundane walks through ruined villages became exercises in observation and reaction, each alley or doorway treated as a potential encounter. The weapon's reliability allowed soldiers to focus less on its mechanics and more on the strategy of movement, positioning, and improvisation, creating a rhythm that blurred the line between routine and readiness. As weeks passed, these daily rituals solidified both skill and psychological advantage. The M3 was no longer merely an instrument of firepower. It was a symbol of confidence, adaptability, and subtle dominance over the battlefield. Soldiers on both sides internalized its presence. Americans integrated it into every tactical decision, while Germans learned caution, suspicion, and constant vigilance. The rhythm of life with the grease gun had become inseparable from the rhythm of combat itself. By late December 1944, McNally's squad had settled into a predictable cadence, yet each day carried the potential for sudden violence. The M3 grease gun, now polished and familiar, was both a tool and a ritualistic companion. Soldiers carried out drills almost subconsciously, stripping and cleaning the weapon, checking magazines, adjusting slings, and rehearsing movement sequences through ruined houses and streets. Letters describe how soldiers would joke with each other, tapping the stamped metal and murmuring mock encouragements. "Do your job, ugly beauty." These small interactions reinforced morale, camaraderie, and the growing bond between man and weapon, shaping the mental state of soldiers even in the calm hours. The American routine extended beyond cleaning and drills. Supply runs ensured that ammunition was distributed efficiently. Training officers devised drills emphasizing mobility and rapid response. Night watches were conducted in a rhythm that anticipated ambushes yet remained adaptable. Soldiers learned to coordinate bursts from multiple M3s, combining controlled fire with squad tactics to maximize both firepower and psychological effect. The gun's low recoil and lightweight frame made it ideal for fluid maneuvering, allowing teams to transition seamlessly from defensive positions to aggressive sweeps. Diaries and letters frequently note that these routines became second nature. Soldiers didn't just operate the weapon, they flowed with it, instinctively anticipating when, where, and how it would be most effective. For the Germans, routine meant vigilance. Bauer's unit meticulously adapted to the presence of the grease gun. Patrols were slower, scouts doubled back for cover, and every approach to a village or building was calculated against the weapon's known capabilities. After-action reports highlight the strain of constant anticipation. Even when out of direct combat, soldiers remained mentally engaged, their routines dominated by the fear of sudden bursts from the little gun. Memoirs recall men sleeping in shifts, reviewing maps and building layouts, or quietly rehearsing responses to imagined ambushes. The psychological weight of the M3 became a daily companion, shaping behavior as much as any physical threat. Humor, creativity, and adaptation marked both sides' routines. McNally's squad often used spare parts to improve handling, rig improvised slings, or craft makeshift cleaning kits from what was at hand. Letters reflect a mixture of levity and pragmatism. The gun's ugliness was a source of jokes, but its reliability demanded respect. German soldiers, meanwhile, adjusted their formations, firing protocols, and even language around the M3. The phrase Der kleine Teufel, the little devil, appears repeatedly in reports and diaries, underscoring the melding of dread, respect, and superstition into the fabric of routine. Even in moments of quiet, the motif of ugly efficiency persisted. Soldiers internalized its lessons. Simplicity could trump sophistication. Mass production could create battlefield superiority, and psychological impact could be as decisive as technical capability. The M3 shaped movements, decisions, and expectations. It was a constant reminder that underestimation could be fatal. Both sides came to understand that daily life with the weapon was inseparable from survival, strategy, and the unspoken rhythm of combat. As routines solidified, the M3 was poised to play a decisive role in a turning point, an action that would transform its reputation from a clever tool into a symbol of fear, ingenuity, and the unexpected power of industrial pragmatism. January 14th, 1945. The shattered town of Bastogne lay under a grey, biting sky, streets littered with frozen debris and abandoned vehicles. McNally's squad advanced cautiously, the M3 grease guns slung at ready, their compact frames barely visible in the ruins of buildings shelled days earlier. The quiet was deceptive. German infantry had regrouped, and Lieutenant Ernst Bauer's men were preparing defensive positions, aware of the American reliance on small, rapid-fire weapons in close-quarters combat. This engagement would crystallize the true power of the ugly $30 gun. Inside a partially collapsed bakery, McNally signaled his squad forward. The first bursts of the M3 erupted in the still air. Rat-tat-tat, each shot deliberate, controlled, and unnervingly sudden. German soldiers, expecting heavier American firepower, froze. Tracers ricocheted against broken brick, punctuating the silence with sharp staccato. Bauer's orders, meant to coordinate a counterattack, were drowned out by the compact thunder of the grease-smeared little guns. Diaries from his unit later recalled a sense of disbelief. "We faced them, but they were everywhere. The gun appeared and disappeared, firing as if possessed. This action highlighted the psychological potency of the M3. The weapon's size, speed, and simplicity allowed American squads to navigate buildings and streets with surprising mobility. McNally's men exploited staircases, rubble-strewn alleys, and shattered walls, delivering bursts from positions the Germans had assumed safe. Every room cleared reinforced the aura of unpredictability. The ugly efficiency motif deepened. Letters home from McNally capture the surreal mix of fear, exhilaration, and respect for a weapon that had once seemed crude but now commanded dominance. Bauer's unit attempted to adjust, retreating behind makeshift barricades and firing from corners. The M3, however, enabled fluid American movement. Light, reliable, and remarkably controllable, it allowed squads to advance without hesitation. Soldiers fired from the hip, around corners, and through broken doorways, maintaining continuous pressure. After-action reports describe a cumulative effect. The German men, trained for methodical defense, were caught off guard repeatedly, their formations fractured by both firepower and the fear it inspired. The turning point emerged not merely from technical advantage, but from the human response it provoked. Bauer's soldiers hesitated at each threshold, double-checked corners, and delayed counterattacks, each pause magnifying the Americans' effectiveness. The compact M3 became a tool of psychological warfare, teaching that even a low-cost, ugly firearm could dictate the tempo of battle. McNally's squad recognized this instinctively, coordinating bursts with movement to exploit the enemy's uncertainty. The battle transformed into a lesson. Speed, surprise, and simplicity could outweigh numerical superiority and defensive planning. Outside the bakery, German infantry attempted a flanking maneuver, only to encounter another M3 team hidden behind rubble. The bursts were sudden, the sound precise, and the effect devastating. Bauer's men began murmuring the weapon's now feared nickname, Der kleine Teufel. Across the town, similar engagements repeated this pattern. Small squads wielding inexpensive submachine guns disrupted larger, more confident German formations. Letters and captured reports from this period underscore a recurring theme. The weapon's psychological impact rivaled its physical damage. American soldiers, in contrast, integrated the M3 into every aspect of their action. They moved instinctively, trusting the gun's reliability and speed. Field journals note that even soldiers with minimal training could maintain the rhythm of firing, advancing, and clearing positions efficiently. This democratization of firepower reinforced the motif of ugly efficiency. The weapon's lack of sophistication was irrelevant, its utility in rapid, decisive combat unquestionable. The town of Bastogne, frozen and silent after the skirmishes, became a proving ground. For the Germans, it was a humbling experience. The ugly M3 had reshaped their understanding of American infantry tactics. For the Americans, it confirmed that ingenuity, mass production, and adaptability could amplify human capability in ways that seemed almost magical under combat conditions. By late January, Bauer's unit had internalized the M3's disruptive presence. Retreats became more cautious, advances measured in hesitant steps, and every street, doorway, and stairwell was scrutinized for potential ambush. The psychological impact of the weapon had now eclipsed its tactical function. Even when not fired, the grease gun dictated German movements and decisions. Captured diaries recount soldiers whispering, "Anywhere it could be, anywhere it might wait." Fear had transformed into an operational constraint, shaping strategy as much as bullets. McNally's squad leveraged this pervasive tension. Bursts of fire were no longer isolated. They became choreographed maneuvers, combining suppression, flanking, and rapid repositioning. The M3's reliability allowed continuous operation in rubble-strewn streets, where heavier weapons faltered, and its lightweight enabled soldiers to navigate narrow hallways and debris without slowing momentum. Letters describe the rhythm of combat as almost musical, each rat-tat-tat punctuating movement, every corner cleared in sequence, turning chaos into controlled effectiveness. A pivotal moment arrived during a raid on a fortified farmhouse. Bauer's men had prepared a strong defense, expecting Thompson and M1 carbines. Yet the M3 proved decisive. McNally's squad slipped through collapsed walls, firing short, precise bursts from unexpected angles. German soldiers, despite training and preparation, were paralyzed by both speed and unpredictability. Bauer's notes later reflected disbelief. They seemed everywhere at once, a small, ugly gun dictating our defeat. The M3, cheap and mass-produced, had converted industrial efficiency into psychological domination, creating outcomes far beyond what the raw numbers would suggest. The motif of ugly efficiency had reached its climax. Every engagement reinforced that appearance was irrelevant. The value lay in function, speed, and reliability. The psychological weight carried by the weapon shaped decision-making on both sides, and even small squads wielding M3s could dictate outcomes previously thought to require numerical superiority. German soldiers became increasingly defensive, cautious to the point of overcompensation, and sometimes avoided engagement entirely. The little gun had earned its reputation, a testament to ingenuity amplified by production scale and tactical acumen. Beyond the battlefield, these encounters had operational implications. Reports highlight how American forces began integrating the M3 into every close-quarters strategy, from street sweeps to building assaults. German units, meanwhile, adjusted doctrines, favoring dispersed formations and extended reconnaissance. Despite these adaptations, the weapon's impact persisted. Its psychological edge, coupled with its rapid deployment, ensured that it remained an unpredictable and feared presence. Letters captured from prisoners note a recurring theme. The grease gun's simplicity belied a mastery that was impossible to anticipate, rendering prior defensive training inadequate. The turning point in Bastogne and similar skirmishes crystallized a broader truth. War is not always won by the largest, heaviest, or most sophisticated weapons. Sometimes a $30, crudely stamped submachine gun, wielded with discipline, could redefine the battlefield. Its staccato bursts, light frame, and psychological reach demonstrated that efficiency and adaptability could rival prestige, changing the way both sides viewed combat engagement. As American squads pressed forward, their confidence intertwined with the weapon's reliability. For the Germans, hesitation became instinctual, their strategies constrained by fear of sudden, precise bursts from a gun they had once dismissed. The turning point was complete. The M3 had shifted from a tool of convenience to an agent of tactical and psychological dominance, setting the stage for the collapse, escape, and liberation of German positions in early 1945. February 3, 1945, a thin, grey dawn crept over the remnants of the Siegfried Line. American infantry advanced cautiously, the frozen earth crunching under boots and the occasional muffled clang of abandoned equipment echoing across the landscape. Sergeant John Mac McNally gripped his M3 grease gun, now worn from months of constant use, but as reliable as ever. Its stamped steel surface bore the fingerprints, scratches, and oil stains of countless skirmishes, each marking the passage from preparation to execution. Lieutenant Ernst Bauer's company faced a bleak reality: months of combat, harrowing retreats, and the psychological strain induced by the M3 had worn down both men and morale. Their once confident formations now hesitated. Every village, hedgerow, or ruined building approached with caution, suspicion, and dread. The grease gun's presence had transformed the landscape of combat. Small squads could strike with precision, vanish, and reappear elsewhere, dictating not just physical outcomes, but the psychological tempo of the battlefield. The collapse began subtly. Bauer's troops, ordered to hold a partially intact village, found themselves disoriented by rapid American maneuvers. McNally's squad split into pairs, moving along shattered walls and collapsed fences, firing controlled bursts that cut through the remnants of German defensive positions. Tracers illuminated the fog, each flash reinforcing the motif of ugly efficiency. For the Germans, even minor gunfire became an urgent threat. Hesitation compounded as they struggled to coordinate counterfire against weapons that seemed to emerge unpredictably. German retreats, once orderly, devolved into chaos. Diaries recovered after the war describe soldiers falling back through icy streets, attempting to regroup, but constantly under threat from small, mobile American teams. Bauer himself noted in his post-war memoirs, "They appeared everywhere, yet nowhere. That little gun turned every corner into danger, every building into a trap." The M3's influence was no longer limited to individual skirmishes. It had reshaped the operational reality of the front, amplifying the psychological impact of collapse and disorder. McNally's squad pressed forward into the village square, clearing buildings and securing streets with synchronized bursts and rapid movement. The small, cheap firearm allowed swift transitions from cover to open space, a contrast to heavier weapons that slowed squads and exposed them to return fire. Every engagement reinforced both tactical advantage and the weapon's growing legend. What appeared insignificant to the eye had proven devastating in the hands of disciplined soldiers, turning the collapse of German positions into a study in asymmetric efficiency. Meanwhile, Bauer attempted to salvage command. Orders were shouted through rubble-strewn streets, but fear and exhaustion hindered coordination. Soldiers hesitated at thresholds, double-checked corners, and frequently paused to reassess under the staccato pressure of the M3. Even when numerical advantage existed, the psychological weight of facing a weapon that could appear suddenly and fire reliably disrupted their operations. Letters from captured soldiers reflect a recurring theme. The little gun made us doubt ourselves more than any artillery. The Americans' momentum accelerated. The grease gun's compact design allowed squads to exploit every structural weakness, from shattered windows to collapsed doorways. McNally's team maneuvered fluidly, using speed, surprise, and controlled bursts to dominate intersections and secure exits. Reports from the front describe the M3 as both a force multiplier and a psychological instrument. Its reliability allowed for daring tactics that would have been impractical with heavier submachine guns. As German forces withdrew, the interplay between fear and physical attrition became evident. Bauer's men abandoned equipment, misjudged distances, and overcompensated defensively. The M3's presence had transformed battlefield expectations. Victory was no longer just a function of numbers or firepower, but of adaptability, speed, and the exploitation of human hesitation. American forces, guided by disciplined squads and the faithful grease gun, pushed forward with momentum that seemed unstoppable. The collapse of German positions culminated in the liberation of strategic villages, forests, and crossroads. The M3 had proven its dual role: a simple weapon, engineered for efficiency, and a psychological lever that dictated enemy movements. Its influence extended beyond individual battles, shaping operations and forcing adaptations in German tactical doctrine. By mid-February 1945, the German front lines in the Ardennes were fracturing. Bauer's unit, exhausted and demoralized, executed a series of retreats that were increasingly uncoordinated. Every street, alley, and abandoned farmhouse held the potential for the sudden, staccato bursts of M3 fire. Soldiers described the constant tension. Even when silent, it felt like it was everywhere. We never knew where it would strike next. The weapon had become a shadow over their actions, a relentless presence that dictated movement and sapped morale. McNally's squad capitalized on this psychological edge. Small teams moved in fluid patterns, advancing through partially destroyed buildings while delivering precise bursts. The grease gun's simplicity allowed them to adapt instantly, fire from the hip, around corners, or from unconventional positions without losing speed or control. Each engagement deepened the mythos of ugly efficiency, the crude $30 submachine gun consistently outperforming expectations, both in its mechanical reliability and the fear it inspired in German troops. As retreating German units abandoned villages and strategic positions, McNally's team pushed into territory that had previously seemed impassable. Mines and makeshift barricades slowed movement, yet the M3 enabled rapid clearing of interior spaces, keeping momentum alive. Letters from American soldiers emphasize how the weapon's design allowed for adaptability and confidence. Even when outnumbered, small squads could maintain offensive pressure, exploiting every hesitation among the enemy. Bauer's men, meanwhile, were forced to improvise defensive measures, often unsuccessfully, in an effort to counter a threat that appeared ubiquitous and unstoppable. The climax of collapse unfolded in a forested sector near the Rhine. German resistance had stiffened, but fatigue and fear had set in. McNally's squad advanced through underbrush and broken trees, employing bursts of fire to flush enemy positions. The psychological effect of the M3 was evident. German soldiers hesitated, misjudged distances, and frequently abandoned their posts in the face of what they perceived as overwhelming and unpredictable firepower. The motif of ugly efficiency reached its zenith. A weapon of modest appearance had reshaped the very calculus of combat. By late February, American forces had liberated key towns and secured river crossings. Bauer's unit, once confident, now faced evacuation orders, surrendering in pockets to maintain what remained of cohesion. Debriefings and prisoner letters consistently noted the impact of the M3, not its glamour, nor its sophistication, but its reliability, mobility, and capacity to instill fear. Soldiers reflected that the little gun's effectiveness extended beyond mechanics into the realm of perception. Every encounter reinforced the terror of unpredictability, the advantage of speed, and the efficacy of simplicity. McNally's team paused atop a hill overlooking a liberated village. Frost hung in the air, mixing with the lingering scent of smoke, wood, and cordite. The M3, now familiar in every sense, rested against McNally's shoulder, its presence a testament to innovation, mass production, and human adaptability. The soldiers knew that these few months had transformed the battlefield. The balance of power could hinge on ingenuity as much as manpower, and psychological dominance often proved decisive. As the Rhine crossings opened and German forces continued their retreat, the story of the ugly $30 gun solidified in both memory and documentation. It had transformed from a crude, inexpensive weapon into a symbol of tactical and psychological supremacy, reshaping combat operations and demonstrating the enduring impact of efficiency married to human skill. The stage was now set for reflection and aftermath, to understand not only the mechanical and tactical legacy of the M3, but also the enduring imprint on those who wielded it, faced it, and survived under its relentless, ugly efficiency. March 1st, 1945, the winter light fell pale and muted across the Rhine Valley. The ruins of villages still smoking, trees stripped bare, and the distant river reflecting shards of sun through drifting fog. Sergeant John McNally walked slowly among abandoned German positions, M3 grease gun slung loosely at his side. The weapon, once a tool of necessity and speed, now carried the weight of memory. The countless corners cleared, the streets secured, and the psychological storms it had unleashed upon those who had underestimated it. Soldiers around him were silent, their eyes tracing the lines of destruction, reflecting on the months of combat, fear, and adaptation that had culminated in this fragile calm. Bauer's men, dispersed and captured in pockets, experienced the aftermath differently. Their diaries recount a mixture of relief, resentment, and lingering anxiety. The M3's staccato bursts haunted memory like echoes in empty hallways. Letters preserved in military archives describe how even weeks after surrender, soldiers found themselves scanning abandoned buildings, imagining the sudden, unpredictable appearance of the ugly little devil. It had not only shaped battles but had imprinted itself into the perception of war, a lesson in how small, efficient tools could rewrite expectations and sow psychological disorientation far beyond their physical capacity. For the Americans, reflection intertwined with practicality. The M3's performance validated strategies that emphasized mobility, adaptability, and decentralized engagement. Field reports compiled post-war highlighted that efficiency, simplicity, and reliability, even in seemingly modest instruments, could yield disproportionate results. Soldiers wrote that the grease gun had become more than metal and spring. It was a confidence generator, a psychological equalizer, and a tactical multiplier. In the quiet moments, cleaning and maintaining it became acts of remembrance, a way to honor what had been endured and accomplished. The motif of ugly efficiency persisted in post-war analysis. Historians and military analysts examined the M3's role in close-quarters engagements, urban sweeps, and hedgerow encounters, noting the synergy of design, production scale, and psychological effect. The weapon, inexpensive and mass-produced, contrasted sharply with the ornate, high-cost firearms of earlier eras, proving that ingenuity and functionality often outweighed appearance. Museum records, interviews with surviving soldiers, and declassified field reports corroborate this. The grease gun's legacy was as much in shaping perception as it was in shaping terrain and tactics. Bauer's post-war reflections reveal the lasting impression of the M3. Writing decades later, he noted the paradox. The simplest thing, the ugliest little piece of metal, caused more fear than entire battalions sometimes. It forced us to rethink every assumption, every tactic. Veterans of both sides agreed that encounters with the weapon remained vivid memories, marked by the interplay of surprise, speed, and adaptability. Even soldiers who had survived its bursts admitted the lessons lingered. War was not solely about numbers or firepower, but about perception, mobility, and the human capacity to leverage even the humblest tools with skill and ingenuity. The aftermath also reveals the broader operational and industrial lessons. The M3 exemplified how streamlined production, standardization, and a focus on essential functionality could translate into battlefield dominance. Letters from McNally's unit described the logistical simplicity, rapid deployment, easy maintenance, and robust construction allowed squads to remain flexible and effective, even under prolonged exposure to adverse conditions. The German forces' reactions underscored another truth. Psychological impact could rival physical damage in determining outcomes, especially when combined with tactical adaptability. Quiet moments in liberated villages as soldiers paused to survey destruction or gather supplies highlighted the human dimension of this efficiency. Soldiers wrote of shared stories, jokes about the ugly duckling, and subtle rituals that intertwined the weapon into daily life. The grease gun had shaped their routines, fostered trust among squads, and cultivated a sense of control amid chaos. Meanwhile, the German perspective emphasized hesitation, heightened awareness, and respect born of necessity, psychological traces that would last long after the guns fell silent. The M3's influence extended beyond immediate combat. Military schools and post-war training programs incorporated lessons drawn from its design and deployment. Manuals emphasized mobility, simplicity, and human-machine synergy. Histories of the European theater often note that while tanks, artillery, and aircraft dominated strategic planning, small, efficient infantry weapons, exemplified by the grease gun, had decisively shaped the outcomes of countless engagements. As the Rhine Valley settled into a fragile winter calm, the M3 rested quietly in depots and armories, its reputation already entering legend. Soldiers carried the lessons of speed, surprise, and efficiency into the next stages of reconstruction, while those who had faced it bore lasting impressions of its impact on perception, morale, and the rhythm of combat. Spring 1945 arrived over the Rhine, painting shattered villages with a tentative warmth. Soldiers wandered among ruins, the scent of scorched timber and wet earth lingering in the air. McNally, now weary yet reflective, handled the M3 grease gun with a practiced hand, running fingers along its worn metal. The weapon, so often dismissed as crude and inexpensive, had become a symbol of endurance, adaptability, and tactical ingenuity. Its staccato bursts no longer rang in the ears of soldiers. Instead, memories lingered in quiet reflection. The lessons of months in combat crystallized in understanding and respect. German veterans, including Bauer, returned to towns that had been reduced to rubble. Diaries and letters reveal lingering unease. Even months later, the thought of the M3's rapid, unpredictable fire sparked shivers. The psychological imprint of the ugly little gun endured, shaping post-war perceptions of combat, risk, and the unpredictable power of simple, effective design. Interviews with former soldiers describe how training and experience had altered not just tactics, but mindset. Fear, caution, and adaptability were permanently intertwined with their memory of the weapon. The broader historical lens frames the M3 as a remarkable study in efficiency. Its inexpensive design, lightweight, and reliability allowed American squads to operate flexibly, exploiting both terrain and enemy hesitation. Historians, analyzing after-action reports and captured diaries, note that the grease gun's impact extended far beyond its mechanical function. It shaped combat psychology, dictated small unit maneuvers, and altered enemy expectations. Industrial pragmatism had been translated into battlefield dominance, demonstrating that innovation and simplicity could rival more elaborate and costly armaments. Soldiers' rituals in camp life, letters home, and memoirs reflect a combination of pride and humor. The grease gun, once mocked for its appearance, became a trusted companion, earning nicknames and tales of improbable exploits. Its presence shaped the rhythm of daily life. Cleaning, maintenance, drills, and shared stories reinforced camaraderie and trust. The German experience mirrored this, albeit from a different angle. Caution, heightened vigilance, and the persistent psychological weight of anticipating sudden fire became ingrained in training, memory, and reflection. McNally's post-war writings emphasize the fusion of human skill with simple, effective design. The M3 had allowed small squads to achieve outcomes disproportionate to their size and numbers, proving that adaptability, speed, and precision could outweigh brute force. Bauer, in contrast, reflected on the lessons learned under duress, the power of perception, the danger of underestimating simplicity, and the enduring influence of psychological pressure in shaping decisions and survival. Together, their experiences illustrate the full arc of the weapon's influence, from overlooked tool to tactical and psychological catalyst. The story of the ugly $30 gun is now more than a military anecdote. It is a testament to how innovation, human adaptability, and efficient design can converge to shape history. It reminds us that tools, no matter how unassuming, carry power when wielded with skill, discipline, and understanding of human behavior. The M3 left an imprint not just on battles but on the men who wielded it, faced it, and survived under its relentless efficiency.